Many studying strategies for SAT Vocab are actually based on old versions of the SAT, which means that you may be spending your time studying words that you absolutely don't need to study. If you want to know how to study for the new SAT vocabulary, I'm here to help. I'm Melissa with PrepScholar, and PrepScholar is a leading test prep website founded and staffed by test prep experts in all of the major standardized tests like the ACT, the SAT, the GRE, etc., etc. In addition to offering a whole bunch of articles about pretty much everything you can imagine with regard to college admissions and test prep, we also have a customized tutoring program that scales to your needs so you don't waste time studying things that you don't need. Instead, you're always going to be focused on the stuff that you need to do well on the SAT. You can learn more about all of that down in our description, which is going to have links to some relevant blog posts as well as more information about the tutoring program that PrepScholar offers. If you find this video useful, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, which you can do by clicking the big red button right down there. You can also click the little bell icon to get a notification every time we upload, which means that you're going to be the first to see everything that we post. Also, consider leaving me a comment down below with any studying strategies you have for SAT Vocab, as well as any questions you might have about the SAT essay, which is now optional because that's going to be the focus of my next video. So if you watched my last video, which you can find by clicking the card right up there, you'll know that the new SAT is based primarily on mid-level vocab. So the old SAT was infamous for having what we refer to as SAT words, which basically means words that you learn for the purpose of the SAT and then rarely use again in your lifetime. Mid-level vocabulary, on the other hand, is words that you may not use every day or that you may not see every day, but that you may run into when you're reading news articles or when you're reading books or that you may hear on the news and stuff like that. In changing its focus to these mid-level words, the SAT is asking you to consider words in context. So it's kind of coaching you into reading and thinking about, high-level concepts using words that you're going to see more frequently than fortuitous or anathema or whatever. Down in the description box below, we have actually a list of 262 mid-level vocab words for you to study. So if you're unsure what exactly mid-level vocab is, and that's totally fair, consider visiting our blog post down there and taking a look through some of those words. So as I discussed in the last video, SAT vocab isn't as important as it was in the past. Now you're going to be running into somewhere between like 8 and 12 SAT vocab questions on the entire test, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't study it, because one of the important things about the new SAT vocab is that it's considering words in context, and the contexts that they use on the SAT are things like articles about science or passages from literature, things where even if you're not engaging with them on a daily basis as an adult, you may very well be. So if you take some time to brush up on that vocabulary ahead of time, not only is it going to help you on the vocab portion, but it's also going to help you better understand the kinds of passages that you'll be reading in the SAT. You're going to be more prepared for that, even if you're not quizzed on the words directly. So do spend some time brushing up on words like nuance and evoke and desolate, words that you probably aren't using every day, but that are still important to understand. So let's get into 3 different ways to study for SAT vocab. So the first way, obviously, is going to be taking practice tests. This isn't just because you're going to get super familiar with the kinds of questions that show up on the SAT, although of course that is important, but it also means that you're going to be seeing firsthand the kind of language that they're going to be using throughout the SAT. And that means that as you're doing these practice tests, you can take notes on words that you're unfamiliar with, so words where you don't know the meaning or you don't understand the context, and you can make flashcards out of those that you can use to study. So down in the description box, we have links to a whole bunch of free practice tests, so don't be afraid that you're not going to find any. There's some right down there. So the second major way to study for SAT vocab is through reading. And I know that reading sounds like kind of a weird way to study. It's not about memorization. It really is just about the act of reading. What I recommend is taking some time in your regular studying practice to add some reading of sites like the New York Times or like Slate or Wired, or if you're into short fiction, you can browse sites like Tor.com, which has science fiction and fantasy stories as well as a lot of articles. or websites like The New Yorker. The New Yorker fiction section has a lot of short fiction that's more on the realistic side. You can also read publications focused on your field. There's lots of blogs out there about video games or movies or TV or comics or whatever, and all of those are good places to improve your vocabulary and better understand context. Just make sure that you're reading high-level edited work as opposed to reading social media posts or something, which generally don't go through multiple levels of editing. As you're reading, go through and take notes on words that are unfamiliar to you so that you can add them to your studying roster. So when you're reading, the New York Times or Tor.com or whatever, you are engaging with material that may be more sophisticated than, an everyday basis, but that's the kind of thing that's going to show up on the SAT. So you're learning more about context and you're learning about how these words are used and you're broadening your vocabulary all at the same time, which is the most important thing in studying for SAT Vocab. You're instead focusing on words that people actually use, even if you yourself are not speaking them every day, like you're not texting them to your friends or whatever. So you can't predict what's going to be on the SAT ahead of time. That's obvious. But what you can do is familiarize yourself with words that are unfamiliar to you and broaden your vocabulary that way, which sets you up better to succeed on SAT Vocab. So the third major way of studying for the SAT is using what's called the Waterfall Method of studying. So some of you may be doing this already and not knowing that it has a name, but basically what this means is creating a bunch of flashcards with unfamiliar terminology or whatever concept you need to study, and you put them all in one pile that effectively means don't know. Then you go through and you sort it into another pile. The words you do know get put in one pile for the do know pile, and then the words that you don't know get put into their own pile, a don't know pile. Then you leave the do know pile alone for now. So once you've done that, then you're going to go ahead and go through the don't know pile again. So you're going to do the exact same thing, split it into multiple piles. You keep your main don't need to study pile over here, then you start a second pile of words that you know now, and then words you don't know now. And then you keep dividing it and dividing it and dividing it until you run out of words that you don't know. So once you reach the end and you have a good handle on all of the words, then you're gonna work your way through in the opposite direction. So you're going to be going back through and moving words further and further and further until you've memorized all of them. And obviously you can repeat this over several days. You don't have to do it all at once, but this method ensures that you're working primarily on the words you don't know, rather than spending a lot of time studying all of the words, regardless of whether or not you need to know them. So that's going to be it for this week. There are obviously a lot more ways to study for the SAT. Those are just 3 of them. So if you have any that you really like, please feel free to leave them down in the comments because you never know, somebody else might need them. Also, consider taking a look down at the links down below because those are going to have some additional study methods so that you have even more ways to help ensure that you're going to get a good score on the SAT vocab questions. Once again, please subscribe to this channel if you like this video or any of the new videos we've been putting up. It's going to help me keep making them, which is really good. You can also hit the notification bell, which is going to give you a notification every time we upload, which means you'll be the first to see our new content. And again, down in the description, we not only have links to blog posts, but also to information about PrepScholar's SAT prep program, which is going to help you target the things that you need help with rather than spending time on, math formulas you've already done 10,000 times when what you really need to know is mid-level vocabulary. Next time, I'm going to be talking about the SAT essay, which is now optional with the new SAT. So if you have any questions about that, like if you need to take it or, what you should be planning to write about on it, how much time you have, please leave a comment down below so that I know to address it within the video. Thanks again for your time and happy prepping.